Well, a lot of today's podcast is about pride, Métis pride, and also pride in Canada. I'm Marcy Markusa. This is Manitoba. So let's start with the national pride, shall we? You might know that Flag Day this year has taken on new meaning. So 60 years ago, our current flag was raised for the first time on Parliament Hill in Canada. But now 5 former prime ministers have signed a letter, and they've been urging Canadians to talk about Flag Day this year in the face of Donald Trump's threats and to raise a flag, thinking about that. We had a really interesting conversation that we're going to play first here on the podcast with someone that understands a lot about sovereignty and a lot about the relationship between the United States and Canada. Here is my conversation with former Governor General of Canada, Michaëlle Jean.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. What a moment, this letter by these 5 former prime ministers. What did you make of it?
Well, the letter is interesting and the initiative is great. To have 5 former prime ministers calling on Canadians to proudly fly the flag, and not as an act of nationalism or patriotism, but as a reaffirmation of our shared purpose. You know, unlike nations built on rigid identities, Canada has never been a homogenized society. We are a vast and diverse land shaped by many landscapes and humanscapes where, different histories, cultures, and peoples have come together in an ongoing, evolving dialogue. So our flag represents a commitment. A commitment to what? A commitment to inclusion, a commitment to justice, and a commitment to action, taking action together. And Canada is a work in progress. It's something we must build and defend like every day. And again, I like this idea of, defining the purpose of Canada as inclusion for justice.
How needed is it at this time? I mean, it might sound like a silly question. You were quite vocal during Trump's first administration when he used crude language when talking about immigrants from Haiti specifically and other African countries. I mean, how concerned are you about Trump's policies this term?
Well, what you are referring to was such an insult, calling African countries and my native land shithole countries. That's the words he used. And we were all offended, and I did react to that. And I believe that we need to remain very, very vigilant because, for Donald Trump, to even, speak of absorbing Canada as a 51st U.S. state means that he doesn't respect Canada's sovereignty. His driving force is something like a feverish, thirst for conquest. It's not something like it. It is that, a feverish thirst for conquest, imperialist and neocolonial ambitions expressed through bizarre pronouncements. Seizing Greenland, taking control of the Panama Canal, or even taking control of Gaza. Now an open-air, graveyard, the scene of carnage, where hundreds of bodies still lie beneath the rubble, to turn it into a luxury, seaside city, an Israeli-American Riviera. After first deporting the 2 million traumatized Palestinians who still live there to neighboring Arab countries, who are themselves, very disturbed by this kind of idea. So. Yeah, he has no respect for the humankind. He believes that history starts with him. That's the way he sees things.
So let me ask you the sovereignty question then, because there are a lot of Canadians right now, as you well know, sitting around there, sitting on the couch, sitting around the dinner tables, maybe watching the news at the end of the night, and having a conversation about. Someone will say, we don't have to be that serious about our sovereignty. That's just, bluster, rhetoric. He's trying to make a deal. And others saying we need to lean into this moment in a serious way like we never have before. How do you respond to that? Like, what do you think Canadians should make of these threats and about making Canada a 51st state?
I think we have to take it very seriously because he will persist. His economic attacks, like tariffs, trade barriers, and political destabilization, are calculated strategies to weaken our independence. So one thing that we need to say, to keep in mind, is that Canada has never been passive. By nature, we persist, we resist, and we act. We will not be forced into submission, nor will we allow external pressures to define our future. So I think maybe one call of action could be reflect, connect, and build bridges. Flag Day is more than a celebration. It's a moment of reflection. What role do each of us play in strengthening, this country? The work of Canada is never finished. It is up to us to continue the journey together. So maybe we could take a few moments to reflect on the bridges we need to build with the rest of the world, not just with the United States, but the rest of the world, within our community, between communities, across regions, in all our own hearts. But also, we probably need to diversify and reinforce our relationships, with the rest of the world, definitely.
Thank you so much for speaking to some of the anxieties, and of course also to some of your feelings about what tomorrow is going to be like on Flag Day. What a pleasure and an honor to speak with you this morning, Michaëlle Jean. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is the former Governor General of Canada, Michaëlle Jean. Well, as I alluded to at the top of the podcast, we are talking about pride. And next on the program, let's talk about Métis pride. What do you do when you feel disconnected from your culture? Well, for one Winnipeg woman, her answer was simple, but the execution was a little bit complicated. Interdisciplinary artist Tracy Charette Fehr first dove into her own Métis family history, and then she looked to other Métis women to help her stitch it all together. The result is a massive 63-foot textile. It's an art installation that honors 400 Métis women all across this country, past and present. The piece is called Honoring Our Métis Mothers, and you can check it out at the Winnipeg Art Gallery. But to learn more about it, Tracy is with us on the podcast to talk about it. Good morning.
Good morning.
So how was it created?
It was created by a group of Métis women, and we are Red River Métis from across the country, here locally, even beyond our borders, into the U.S. All Métis people that have originated here and have gone to other parts when we were dispersed as a Métis nation. So we're coming back together. We're stitching our lives back together. We're stitching our histories back together, and we're honoring the women of the Métis Nation. So it's been incredible. It's just been amazing.
So you invited people to sessions, and they had fabric squares. People might imagine a quilt in their heads, although this is very differently designed. And the idea was that each person would stitch a name. Is that correct?
Right. So what had happened is I had done a 250, a Heartbeat of a Nation in 2021, where I made 250 handmade bowls. And a year later at the St. Boniface Museum gifted those bowls to Métis people. And I asked in return that they give me the name of a Métis woman that they wanted to honor. So I was sitting on all these names and thinking, I can't do this by myself, for one. I need the community to help me. And then also thinking what a wonderful way it would be for us to come together in stitching and beading circles the way that we would have done. And it's a resurgence right now, too, where it's happening more and more in communities. But I thought it'd be a wonderful way of us connecting and reviving those relationships that our grandmothers or our mothers had before we became so far apart from each other. So what I did was we launched the project last year, February 17th, on Louis Riel Day, and at the St. Boniface Museum, which hosted us for the first 6 months of the first 5 months of the project. We met weekly at the St. Boniface Museum. And it was kind of a little bit of a slow start. We had about 50 people at the launch. We had fiddling in the background because there was a Métis fiddler there that day. And there was a lot of enthusiasm, and there was a lot of tears. people were really emotional about recognizing their mothers, their grandmothers. A lot of these women could not admit that they were Métis. There was so much shame and so much discrimination that many of us would go to great lengths to deny our culture and to deny our identity. So part of
what is, I'm just going to interject there for a moment, if I may, because sitting with these women, as you said, delving so deeply into their own histories and their own feelings, as I just have this image of women, as you said, weeping and stitching and talking. And what was it like for you to reconnect with your own Métis family?
Well, for me, it was what happened is my mother passed away when I was 6.5 years old. And when I lost her, or we lost her, we lost our Métis family. My aunties, my grandfather, all of the time that we'd spent growing up in this little Métis community of La Rochelle. And so that was my disconnection. Coming back to them later in life, they had all moved out to BC, was a huge revelation for me. I always felt like I was on the sidelines. I didn't really fit where I was. I'm settler side too. My dad's family is Mennonite, but I never felt like I fit. When I came back with my aunts and sat with them and laughed, and I felt I was home. I felt that I had been missing this most of my life. And there's so many things that, the way we look, the way we talk, the way we speak. My aunts were French speaking. Growing up, we'd lost the language. A couple of my aunts completely lost the language because they were embarrassed to speak their language, which was very much a Michif French. And so it was really embracing that and really feeling like, I felt home. And I wanted other people to have that experience of feeling like they belong. And that the women that maybe could not recognize their heritage, their identity, would be able to come back into the community and heal some of that shame and heal that feelings of being lost and not belonging.
And what a moment this will be to have the names of all of these women stitched by all of these other women all together and unveiled in this in this piece tomorrow. Tracy, thank you so much. Have a peaceful weekend and enjoy the unveiling of this tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
That's Tracy Charette Fehr, who's the interdisciplinary artist behind Honoring Our Métis Mothers. And you can check it out at the Winnipeg Art Gallery for its limited run. Well, I am Marcy Markusa, and thank you so much for being with our podcast today. Don't forget to like and share.